Resident Evil 6 will likely be remade eventually. However, for better and worse, it is a giant mess of a game that will be difficult to remake. Here's what the RE6 remake needs in order to be successful. Like with RE5, co-op was a big part of RE6. Therefore, it's not surprising that for the RE6 remake to succeed, it also needs to bring back cooperative play just like it was before, only better. Both games were defined by co-op. It is a huge part of their charm and our memories of them. Since RE5 is the game that introduced the feature, while RE6 took the concept and ran with it, expanding, refining, and improving it drastically, which made the whole experience much more fun, engaging, entertaining, and chaotic, mostly in a good way. The AI is better in RE6, though not significantly so. Your partner can and will still be a nuisance from time to time. But they are better, and not just because they are smarter, but also because of several key changes to how they work, which make the experience much less frustrating. Changes that RE5 should and likely will adopt, and that RE6 should definitely keep. These changes are: first, they no longer have a health bar, which means that they cannot die during normal gameplay, so no need to babysit them, or to worry about them, or to spend valuable healing resources on them. Second, they no longer use up ammo, meaning that they will always be able to fight, they won't waste your ammo, and you don't have to give them any. Third, they can use every weapon you have access to without you having to give them the weapon, which would prevent you from using it yourself. Fourth, they no longer have their own inventory, nor do you share item drops with them. Now this is a double-edged sword, since while it means that you don't need to manage their inventory and they cannot take things from you, it also means that you cannot use them as sentient backpacks, which aggravates this game's inventory problem, but more on this later. Finally, they are deadlier, which is to say that they are more effective in combat. Now yes, this could just be part of them being smarter, but I think it is worth mentioning separately since they are really valuable to have in battle. They will almost always melee stunned enemies, often to deadly effect, when you are separated from them and they need to give you cover fire, they will keep you safe.
Lena, I need some backup! Thanks.
And just in general, they clearly bring the pain. In fact, if you are out of ammo, you can just let them take care of any enemies. Sure, it might take them a while, but they will get it done. They are valuable allies that will help you get through the game reliably and effectively. Now, it's sadly not all good news for them. Just like in RE5, you do need to wait for them before you can move up to the next area, which can be a pain if they are not right behind you, since they will make you wait a while, especially if you run past enemies in a large area.
Roger!
They might also occasionally get tied up with something. And I really love when their slowness gets me killed.
I hope this info of yours is worth it.
It is. I stake my life on it.
So, like I said for RE5, just force the AI partner to teleport to the next area with you. Or as part of improving the AI, which is still needed for RE6, make it so that they just follow you more closely, thus allowing them to be right there when you need to move up. Which is necessary for times when two are needed to push or open whatever is keeping you from advancing. Though again, this can be kept as is when you have an actual human as your partner, since you can mostly trust them to keep up, and you cannot just leave them behind or force them to teleport to you. Another issue I have with co-op in RE5 that RE6 did not address, or rather it did not address fully, is the near-death state. Unlike in RE5, you are not completely helpless here. You can at least shoot, akin to Last Stand in Call of Duty. Plus, if your partner is unable to get to you, you are not doomed. After a while, provided you are not hit again, you will get back on your feet on your own. However, while this mechanic is better in RE6, it's still far from being good or fun, so I still think it should be removed. It remains annoying and frustrating. Now, before I move on to the other improvements, refinements, and expansions RE6 made to co-op, I just want to add here that yes, removing the ability to share ammo and resources with your partner does limit your ability to work together with another player. So perhaps for the remake, they should keep the system as it currently is when you are playing with the AI, and they should swap to the system RE5 had when you have another human with you. This will give us the best of both worlds. The chance for more cooperation with our partner when we are playing with another person, and a less annoying, more reliable and effective AI companion when we aren't. So, moving on, another big thing RE6 did to improve co-op is that it placed more emphasis on each character and or person's role during gameplay, by providing a lot more moments in which the players and or characters are separated and must fight enemies, solve puzzles, progress through the level, etc. on their own, while also being mindful of helping their partner by providing cover fire and or activating a switch or lever that will allow their partner to advance or that will save them from impending doom. This is in stark contrast to RE5. Chris and Sheba were basically always together save for a few brief sections where Sheba could briefly be boosted to or launched into an area unique to her that allowed her to help you progress. By providing more moments like this, RE6 achieves several great things. First, if you are playing with another person, then you both have more individual responsibility, more chances to save the day and be the hero, more opportunities to prove yourself, more chances to help each other, to work together, to strategize. You can each feel like a more valuable member of the team, and you can also just have a lot more fun, shouting at each other things like help me, hurry up, watch out, etc. It's just a richer, more engaging, and more enjoyable cooperative experience when you are forced to divide and conquer in such a way, to work as one without being next to each other. This also means that the game has more replay value, Whether you play with someone else or with the AI, thanks to the ability to choose your character, unlike in RE5, playing as a different character gives you a very different experience, especially since each character has weapons and/or abilities unique to them. Something the remake should definitely expand. Now yes, forcing you to play separately can be frustrating if the other player is not up to par, but working through such obstacles can be part of the fun. Plus, in my experience, like I mentioned earlier, the AI will not let you down in these moments. Next up is another massive way in which RE6 expanded co-op. Easily my favorite change. In RE5, co-op was limited to just 2 people. In RE6, however, at several points in all campaigns, 3 and up to 4 characters are together at once, and they can all be controlled by players. Having up to 4 people face bosses, solve puzzles, fight hordes of enemies, and progress together is just unbelievably fun, regardless of whether you have 3 friends with you or 3 strangers online. So many players at once is just chaotically hilarious and a blast. I especially love the segments where the 4 players are divided into groups of 2. These lead to either PvP-like scenarios where it feels like you are actively competing with the other duo to see who can overcome the present challenge faster, such as this moment in Leon and Chris's campaigns with the moving mines, or moments where you and your partner have to work together to fight hordes of enemies while also lending a hand to the other duo who are fighting their own battle nearby. And both pairs need to watch out for enemies that pose a threat to everyone. This moment in Chris and Jake's campaigns is a perfect example of this. I especially love that different pairings lead to different conversations, which only adds to the replay value. These are by far the best moments of cooperative play in this game. Assisting and working with so many players makes everything a lot more fun and interesting. Now, while having 3 or 4 characters at once is arguably less fun when playing with the AI, it's still a blast, because having up to 3 characters fighting alongside you is just a sight to behold. It's very cool. They definitely have to bring all these moments back. Heck, they should add more. Super heck, they should have a moment where all 7 main characters fight side by side, which would allow up to 7 people to play together. Man, would this be insane in a very, very good way. I could go on and on about how much fun co-op with so many characters / players is. It truly is one of the best parts of this game. Now of course, playing with others in RE6 was not just about cooperation. Another thing RE6 added to the experience of multiplayer is the ability to face off against other players in actual PvP, both as human versus human, either directly by shooting each other, aka survivors, or indirectly by competing to see who can kill more enemies faster, aka onslaught, and as human versus monster, either by invading another player's game, Dark Souls style to take control of a creature, aka Agent Hunt, or by playing as the Ustanak, aka Predator, or by taking turns being monsters or humans fighting over an objective, aka Siege. Agent Hunt is honestly a mess that is rarely fun to play. The concept is great. Playing as a creature and attacking other players sounds like a good time on paper, but the execution is just terrible due to 3 things. First, latency. Connection is not always the best, which can lead to things like players skipping around, which is frustrating to say the least. Second, the controls are terrible. They are simple enough, but they are not very responsive. Pair this with the fact that the creatures are slow and sluggish, and you get a gameplay experience that is just annoying. Third, human characters are just faster, stronger, and more effective, which when combined with the previous points, makes it almost impossible to do anything, at least anything significant, to skilled players playing as humans. Oftentimes, they just slap you around like a ragdoll and you cannot do anything. Now yes, I get that they probably wanted the scales to be tipped in favor of the human characters, so that you don't end up in a situation where someone invades your game as a monster and they absolutely demolish you into oblivion, preventing you from making any progress. But this does not mean that the Agent Hunt experience should be so one-sided. Besides, since you can just turn it off, you can avoid infuriating situations altogether. In its current state, Agent Hunt is just not very enjoyable, unless you team up with fellow monsters, AI or player controlled, in order to gang up on the human characters, which is basically like the only way to make it a fair fight for the creatures. If they bring back Agent Hunt, they really need to revise and improve it, which I am sure they can easily do, seeing how vastly superior the experience of playing as a monster is in RE Resistance. Survivors is just straight up PvP deathmatch, like playing just about any third-person multiplayer shooter. It's honestly a mixed bag. One-on-one duels are very fun since you only need to worry about hunting down one other player. Once you find them, using all the tools, weapons, combat, and movement options to defeat them can be a lot of fun. With more than 2 players though, it just evolves into utter chaos. Fun chaos, mind you, but chaos nonetheless, which depending on what kind of player you are, may or may not appeal to you. However, in either variation, if your opponent or opponents do not give you a fair fight, then survivors can be very frustrating. Much like Agent Hunt, since you just get bodied repeatedly, unable to even stand up. So for what it is, Survivors is a fun little mode that can be either joyfully fun or infuriatingly annoying, depending on who you are up against, and on whether you choose to embrace the more dishonorable ways to play. That being said, I would not mind seeing Survivors return with some tweaks to make it more fair. But I also would not really mind it if it does not return, since I don't play Resident Evil for adversarial multiplayer. Onslaught is honestly a lot of fun. It's basically mercenaries on steroids, with the added twist that you are competing against another player to see who can kill more enemies and faster. Doing well makes things more difficult for your opponent. This mode is a lot more enjoyable and exciting than you might expect. I always have a blast with it, so I definitely want to see it return. One tweak I would like to see to it is a clear notification that tells you just what horrors you are unleashing on the opposing player. Kind of like how Mercenaries in the RE4 Remake informs you when the mini-bosses are coming. It would be satisfying and hilarious in a maniacal way to know just how you are messing up the other player's day. Extra points if they give us a way to choose just what we send over to them. This would add an extra layer of strategy to the mode, while also giving us an even better, clearer way to obstruct the other player. Siege is a lot like Agent Hunt. They both sound fun on paper, but are executed poorly, for basically the same reasons. Siege has two teams face each other. One team takes control of creatures while the other team assumes the role of human characters. The creatures need to kill a BSAA operative, while the humans must protect said operative. Both teams get to take turns playing each side. The problem is that the playing as a creature experience is just as bad here as it is in Agent Hunt. Controls are awful, gameplay is slow and clumsy, and humans are way too powerful, a lot faster, and more responsive. So the deck is stacked against the creatures. It does not help that the BSAA operative can absolutely wreck creatures. So if you are one, you likely won't have a good time. Being on the side of the humans can be fun, but it's rarely very challenging or interesting. Especially since the BSAA operative basically does not move or do anything other than shoot. If he did, things would be more dynamic and interesting. So Siege is another mode that needs a lot of work if it is to return. Predator is yet another mode that lets you play as a creature. And as you might imagine, it suffers from the same issues as Agent Hunt and the Siege. Now Predator is both better and worse than these two other modes. It's better because the Ustanak is faster and more resilient than the other creatures, so it's more enjoyable and less frustrating to play as it. Emphasis on less. He is still very much clunky and sluggish. It's worse because you are the sole target of everyone else, meaning that all the other players will be focused on you, which means a whole lot of frustration when they gang up on you and thwart your every move. Playing as such a powerful and fearsome creature should be much more exciting than this. Again, RE Resistance is a good example. If they can make playing as the Ustanak feel like playing as Mr. X or Nemesis, then this mode can be a lot of fun. If you are not playing as the Ustanak, then you're playing as a human character running away from him, which can be a lot of fun, especially with a lot of people. So as before, playing as a human is arguably the best part of the mode. Certainly the least frustrating one. Predator also needs some work if it will be brought over to the remake. I honestly prefer mercenaries in RE5. I think this is due to map design and pacing. The maps in RE6 are way too small and narrow for my liking. They just don't flow as well, nor do they give you a lot of options when it comes to getting around. By pacing, I mean the speed and amount of enemies that spawn. In RE6, at first, enemies appear slowly. I often find myself like the John Travolta meme from Pulp Fiction. Even after getting a bunch of kills, you never, at least in my opinion, ever have a big group of angry creatures chasing after you. Only like 5 or 6. So for a horde mode, this version of mercenaries leaves a lot to be desired. Onslaught is honestly a lot better. It features the same not so good maps, yes, but they play a lot better when you have so many enemies to fight. Except for mercenaries, a lot of these extra modes are not really essential to the experience, so I honestly would not mind if they did not make a return. However, they are all fun and unique enough that I think it would be sad if they were removed. Therefore, I think that they should all make a comeback with a bunch of improvements, of course. Heck, they could even bundle them all into a separate multiplayer component like RE Resistance. This way, they are still present, but they do not interfere with the core experience.
Not my lucky day.
Like RE5, one of the biggest problems with RE6 is its focus on action over horror. However, RE6 is even worse in this respect, which really hurts the experience. Probably my biggest gripe in this area is that almost every Juabo has a gun, which means that Chris, Jake, and Ada's campaigns involve a lot of gunfights that force you to either take cover or run around zigzagging so that you avoid getting shot. This makes these campaigns feel more like playing Ghost Recon, Splinter Cell, Gears of War, etc. than Resident Evil. It's honestly not very fun a lot of the time. I especially hate snipers, which are very annoying, and the fact that getting shot a certain amount of times, or with a sniper, will knock you over, staggering you for a few seconds. Here's an egregious example of this. Additionally, these campaigns feature sequences that are straight out of an action movie or a Call of Duty campaign, like car chases,
Don't bother, we can handle this. I've had enough of these.
daring motorcycle and snowmobile escapes,
Just keep going! Anyway, I don't hate you!
fighting helicopters, and engaging an aircraft carrier using a jet. Now, admittedly, some of these are fun and an exciting spectacle, but some aren't, and all of them feel like you're playing something that is not Resident Evil. They are not scary or suspenseful whatsoever. So they must dial down the action and turn up the horror for the RE6 remake. Removing guns entirely or almost entirely from the Juabo and eliminating some or all of the sequences I mentioned earlier, or at least vastly altering them, would significantly help to achieve this. Additionally, they should work on the atmosphere and mood. They should be dark, scary, and tense. Leon's campaign is a perfect example of what they should aim for. His campaign is by far the scariest and the one that feels the most like Resident Evil. It does such a wonderful job of building up tension in its first chapter, and it features a lot of great moments that are genuinely unnerving. It's an excellent example of what a good Resident Evil should be. The other campaigns should definitely follow suit. It should not be too difficult to achieve this, since they all have the necessary ingredients. Just lean more into the claustrophobia found in Chris's campaign with its many indoor close-quarter encounters in tight spaces, expand the invisible snake's role, and drag out and increase the horror in this section where you have to find the 3 passcodes while being stalked by the most annoying and one of the scariest enemies in the game. For Jake's campaign, put the Ustanak to better use. He's a relentless stalker like Mr. X and Nemesis, so make him act as such instead of having him be a threat in mostly scripted moments and boss fights. For Ada's campaign, leverage the fact that she has no partner. Well, at least when you're solo. Make us feel even more isolated and alone, and make puzzles even more prevalent. This game has the pieces for the perfect survival horror experience. It's just a matter of using them effectively and getting rid of the pieces that don't work.
Chris? Leon?
Having multiple campaigns is undeniably one of RE6's best features. However, at the same time, it's also one of its greatest weaknesses. With 7 main characters to choose from and 4 different full campaigns that each have unique encounters, creatures, and moments, and distinct stories that all intertwine and blend seamlessly to paint the overall narrative, it's undeniable that RE6 is an ambitious and grand undertaking that features a lot of variety, imagination, and excitement that you cannot help, love it or hate it, to respect it. However, unfortunately, what is one of its strongest assets is also one of its biggest weaknesses. Since all the campaigns overlap at several points, you end up having to replay certain sections, often just with a different character. This repetition is not really a bad thing per se, but it can be seen as a downside, since it hurts variety, which is something this game ironically has in spades due to having multiple campaigns. Additionally, tonal whiplash is very much a thing in this game. Going from one campaign to another can feel jarring, like going from one game to another, since thematically and gameplay-wise, they are all different. Moreover, while all the campaigns do an admirable job of bleeding into each other, the entire game just feels a bit disjointed because you cannot get the entire story and experience in one continuous go. Honestly though, I do not dislike any of these things. I don't consider them detrimental to the experience, so I truly would not mind getting all 4 campaigns back just as they are, only bigger and better. Now, if they were to address these issues, then I have no idea how they could go about it. Making one big campaign that combines all 4 with you switching perspectives seamlessly several times could work, but this might also be disruptive. Plus, it would rob each campaign of some of their individuality. Whatever they do, all 4 campaigns must make a return in one way or another. One of the biggest problems with RE6 is the overuse of QuickTime events or QTEs. From freeing yourself from an enemy's grasp, to turning a crank, to exposing a boss's weakness, to holding on for dear life, to flying a helicopter, to using a giant drill against a stubborn pursuer, and even during cutscenes, a lot of things in this game require a QTE to achieve. The game is just dominated by them. Heck, even right from the get-go you are bombarded with them. The prologue begins with a bunch of QTEs in a row. I think that they are used way too much, which bogs down the experience by making it more annoying and cumbersome to play. I especially hate how some QTEs get more difficult on harder difficulties, which is just infuriating. Take this section for example from Jake's campaign. I was playing on professional difficulty and I cannot tell you just how many times I had to retry because I simply could not complete the last QTE fast enough. And even once I was able to do so, by damn near giving my hands nerve damage, the AI would just stand there and allow herself to get skewered, illustrating why the AI still needs improvement. In the end, I was able to get through this section with the help of another player, which circumvents the flawed AI. Though I still had to almost break my hands and my controller to complete the QTEs fast enough. This is not only painful, but it's also not very fun. And this part of the game is just one example, arguably the most infamous. Now yes, on easier difficulties you obviously won't have that much trouble with the QTEs, but there will still be way too many of them. Also, I just love when you are playing with another player who is not very proficient with QTEs, which gets you both killed. Case in point, this section again. The other player initially tried opening the doors, but they were too slow and we died several times before they let me do the QTEs, which finally allowed us to succeed. Even when the game does not throw QTEs at you, there is still a lot of button pressing required to do things like crawling on the ground. So this is definitely a problem, and the solution is simple. Either completely remove QTEs or drastically reduce their use, and do not make them harder on higher difficulties. Like, I can only imagine what they must be like on no hope difficulty. You will probably end up with a cast on both hands. Now, I am sure that this will be fixed, since QuickTime events are not as popular nowadays as they were 12 years ago. Additionally, the original RE4 had plenty of QTEs, most notably during cutscenes, but the remake features almost none, and the few that are present have been dramatically simplified. So I think it's safe to assume that QuickTime events will not be a problem in the RE6 remake. Now yes, I know that not everyone hates them. I have seen a lot of comments saying that they don't mind them one bit. And you know what? It's perfectly fine to feel this way. I myself can agree that QTEs can be fun and satisfying when used appropriately in places that make sense and in moderation without requiring me to injure myself or my controller. So I'm perfectly okay with them making a return, but only by taking into account the changes I suggested.
The BSAA has arrived on the scene. Excuse me, can I get a comment, please? Excuse me. Is this outbreak related to the situation back in the States? Is the BSAA involved there as well?
Recent RE games have given us more freedom to roam and explore the environment. While we still don't have a fully open world Resident Evil, we are getting there. I think that like RE5, RE6 should embrace this with its remake. Resident Evil 6 has even more potential than 5 for getting this kind of treatment, since there are several areas across every campaign that can be opened up so that we can survey them at our leisure. For example, in Leon's campaign, why not make Tall Oaks fully explorable? A living, breathing town going through a zombie apocalypse. This would be so cool. It would give the outbreak a scope that we have not really seen in the series. Since while we have seen many such scenarios in towns and cities just like this one, it's always been with fences, wrecked vehicles, debris, etc. blocking our path all around, boxing us into a linear path that only shows some of the chaos. It would be beyond amazing to explore an open-ended zombie-infested town with complete freedom. During this section, Leon is all about saving as many people as possible, and he does end up saving and fighting alongside a few. They could give us the option to go out of our way to save as many as we can by looking all over the city. Assisting them would require completing a variety of objectives. Everyone we save then gathers in one place for the last stand, where you have to hold out against waves of enemies. The more people you save, the more people you have to help you fight. And obviously helping them will reward you with resources, weapons, and hidden goodies. In Chris's campaign, you have to rescue hostages. So why not scatter them all over the city and allow you to rescue them in any order you want, taking your time to explore every nook and cranny in the process. Yes, it might admittedly be too much if they give us an excessive amount of freedom, especially in a series not known for it. But I think that it could work, and it would be very fun. Plus, it would fit the theme of this game. It is after all a game about the danger bioterrorism poses to the whole world. It takes the isolated outbreaks from previous games and it unleashes them on a global scale. What better way to really showcase this than letting us roam freely in greatly expanded areas. Like RE5, RE6 did away with the merchant. However, it went even further by completely removing the ability to upgrade weapons and replacing treasures and money with skill points that you can use to buy and equip up to 3 perks as part of the new skill system, which also allows you to level up some of the perks to make them stronger. I think that the skill system is a nice addition that adds another layer of player customization and progression in a fun way that rewards experimentation and gives you the chance to come up with several loadouts custom made for facing certain enemies and playing in a certain way. So I think that it should definitely make a comeback. Though like most of the other good things that should return, it does need a few improvements. Namely, the price of the skills needs to be reduced or they should allow you to find more skill points. And they should add some new skills, preferably more creative ones rather than the bog standard ones like do more damage to X, etc. In my experience, the best skills are way too expensive. It literally took me a campaign and a half to buy the combat medic skill, meaning I had to save up for it. So I spent a long time with only one cheap skill. What's the point of having so many skills and allowing us to have up to 3 at once if some of them are so expensive that I have to grind for hours in order to be able to afford them, which leaves me skillless for a good while? Now, it's not like the skills are necessary to beat the game, even on harder difficulties. I got through Leon's campaign on veteran and half of Chris's on professional with only melee level 1, so they are definitely not essential. They simply make the game more fun and easier if you need the extra help. But again, what's the point of having them in the game if they are so difficult to get? As for adding new skills, I just think that they would provide some nice variety and the opportunity to craft some interesting builds. Now, like I said, skill points and buying/upgrading skills replace treasure/money and buying/upgrading weapons. I think that this is a mistake. I may be biased here, but I really do love buying and upgrading weapons in my Resident Evil games. Just finding them laying around and being unable to improve them is just boring, and it robs you of both the thrill of going out of your way to get more money and the engaging decision making of choosing which weapon to upgrade and what stat to focus on first. So I think that the remake should let you find money and skill points, or one currency that serves both roles, and they should have a merchant be where we use them/it. Because like RE5, RE6 gives you a boring menu to do all your spending and management. A menu cannot replace having a merchant, who does not have to be the same one from RE4 or Village. Now yes, maybe having 2 currencies or one that serves multiple purposes might give you too much to grind for, and getting to buy and upgrade skills and weapons might be too much to manage. But with 4 campaigns which can share resources beyond New Game Plus, and if they do expand the game with more open-ended exploration, I am sure that these things will not be too much, and we will have plenty of time to engage with and handle them all.
Leon?
Sherry, what are you doing here?
Characters in RE6 need to be improved in 4 ways. First, series veterans, aka Leon, Chris, and Ada, need to interact more with each other. Their long and complicated histories and relationships need to be fleshed out more. We want to see them banter and cooperate more. We would love to learn more about the struggles and the feelings they experience in this game. And it would be awesome if Leon and Chris got to bond even more with their new partners. I think that overall the game does a great job with all of these. It is one of its greatest strengths, but I think that it could stand to do even more and better. Second, newcomers to the series, aka Helena, Pierce, and Jake, and long-time no-see returnee Sherry need more backstory. Sherry less so because we already know her backstory, and she does go over it in this game in one conversation with Jake. But we know very little of what happened to her between RE2 and RE6. I would like to see this time period in her life explored more. The other three have basically no backstory, since they were introduced in this game. It is still to date their only appearance in the series, and the game does a poor job of giving us any details regarding their life prior to this point. Helena cares a lot about her sister, which is what fuels almost everything she says and does. But the game does not do enough to make us care about her sister as well. A deeper dive into their relationship would make Helena a more sympathetic character, and we would feel more invested in her quest to save and avenge Deborah. Also, it would be nice to see her carrying out Simmons's plan, since the game skips over this. And while she does develop a nice bond with Leon, it would be amazing and better if their friendship is given more development through conversations and interactions that endear them to each other and to us. Pierce is very loyal to the BSAA and Chris, even going out of his way to bring Chris back into action. But why is he so loyal? Why, beyond the obvious, does he admire and respect Chris so much? Why does he do so much for him? I mean, he ends up paying the ultimate price in order to fulfill his mission and save Chris. Where does this dedication and commitment come from? I would love to get some backstory on Pierce that dives into what made him be like this. It would make everything he does and say, including keeping Chris's thirst for revenge in check, make a lot more sense and feel more meaningful. And yes, I know that this backstory exists, but not in RE6, which is where it should be. Also, since we are on the topic of Pierce, I think that it's unfair that of all the new characters and of all the partners, he is the only one that dies. It's true that this adds tragedy and a deep emotional moment to the story, and it shatters plot armor at least once. It's not all smooth sailing for our main characters. They are not all untouchable. However, I do feel kind of bad for Pierce, so I honestly would not mind if they changed his fate in the remake. As for Jake, well, like Pierce, we do know some of his backstory, though a lot of it is not present in-game, which is unfortunate and something the remake should address. Plus, a bunch of questions remain, like how and when he found out that he has special powers and how he reacted to this revelation. The remake should definitely explore his backstory a bit more. I want to learn more about him, which yeah, could be done in a future game. Same thing with Helena, since unlike Pierce, they are still alive. But since this is their first game, it makes sense to have this be where they get a lot of their background. Additionally, it would be great to see Jake grapple even more with the fact that Wesker is his father. Also, could we please get some romance between him and Sherry? Third, minor characters should be given more importance. Namely, I am talking about the civilians Leon and Helena save, and the BSAA operatives under Chris's command. All these characters are, for the most part, faceless and or nameless, and they are not really characters, as in, we know basically nothing about them. Their personalities are as basic as it gets, and they provide little to no value to the story other than giving Leon and Helena people to save and grieve over, and giving Chris something to be angry about, and that fuels him to chase down Ada. The thing is that them being such bland, insignificant, and throwaway characters makes it difficult for us to feel invested in or care about whether they live or die and the anguish the main characters go through because of their deaths. So all these minor characters should be given more to do and more to say. They need names and a face. They need to be actual characters, real people we care about, in order for us to feel like we need to help them and terrible when they inevitably meet their demise. The game will be so much better if this is the case. Finn is a great example of what they should go for. Finally, the antagonists could use some work too. Clone Ada / Carla is great. She influences every campaign, she teases and plays mind games with all the protagonists, she does a good job of fooling everyone, us included, into thinking she is the real Ada, and she is the mastermind behind everything. I just think that she deserves a better boss fight. Simmons just needs to be given better motivation. His reason for doing what he did, according to Leon's campaign, is way too cliché and boring. It's pretty much impossible to find him believable as an antagonist when, other than serving up some of the best boss fights in the game, he really does not do very much else of consequence on screen to make us truly buy into the fact that he is evil and responsible for a lot of what happens. He feels too much like a secondary or throwaway bad guy, which yes, might be the point, but he is basically the main antagonist of Leon's campaign, yet he comes across more like a henchman, again outside of his excellent boss fights. Expanding Helena's backstory would be a great way to fix Simmons, since they could show us how he manipulates and coerces Helena into helping him carry out his nefarious plan. They could also have him actually talk to Sherry during her and Jake's campaign, which would showcase him pretending to be the good guy, and confront Leon and Helena verbally a lot more. All these things would turn him into a much better villain, one we can truly hate and that we really want to take down. Now in Ada's campaign, we learn that he loves her, which is a more interesting motivation that should definitely be explored more. Also, the groups he and Carla belong to, Neo, Umbrella, and the family, need to be fleshed out more and made more prevalent / significant.
Should have said a prayer or two while we were still up in the cathedral. Why is it the dead can't ever stay dead?
RE6 is a radical departure from its two predecessors when it comes to gameplay. It is still a shooter with a third-person over-the-shoulder perspective, and it shares a lot of things with RE's 4 and 5, like the ability to melee staggered enemies. However, RE6 features a lot more movement options. From being able to full-on book it as fast as you can, to sliding, dive rolling, rolling on the floor, and docking momentarily. Combat in this game is just a lot more stylish and fast-paced, which makes it extremely fun and thrilling. You can easily bolt quickly from one side to the other, leaving only destruction in your wake, while looking and feeling like a complete badass. I really seriously hope that this style of gameplay returns mostly unchanged. They can and should add to it, giving us more options and variety, and they should definitely improve it. It just feels that sometimes I cannot do what I intend to do. Like I want to slide but I roll instead, or I want to hold a shooting position while laying down and I roll over instead. Now this might be on me, but it feels like sometimes the game does not do what I want it to do, which can be annoying. Now yes, I said that I want them to up the horror and tone down the action. Well, this chaotic style of gameplay obviously suits action more than horror. Restrictive movements and controls are part of what makes early Resident Evil games scary. So asking to have all this speed and the flair return is at odds with my desire for more horror. But this game is just so fun to play that I cannot, in good judgment, say that its gameplay should be sacrificed to better serve the horror. Instead, they should find a way to make both aspects work. Finally, I love the combat gauge, which allows you to pummel enemies at close range, setting them up for even more up-close and personal pain. This is not only a lot of fun, but it's also a great ammo saver and weapon for when you don't have ammo. I especially love takedowns that use the environment or enemy weapons. Now yes, once the gauge is depleted, you are left winded and out of air, which prevents you from doing more kicking and punching and from sprinting. This state is a little goofy, and it feels awful, but they had to balance free, powerful, effective melee somehow. But maybe they went a little too far. It goes without saying that I want to see the combat gauge and everything it allows you to do return. Just dial back the consequences for depleting it.
Him again? Friend of yours?
More like an ex-girlfriend. Guy doesn't know when to quit.
I had honestly forgotten how good boss fights are in this game. Well, most of them. These bosses are some of the best in the series, as are the encounters they provide. Therefore, they should all return. This includes Simmons, Deborah, the Ustanak, and the giant BOW from the end of Chris's campaign, which I am sure will all return since they are integral to the plot, and the invisible snake from Chris's campaign, the Berserk from Leon's campaign, and the chainsaw guy from Jake and Ada's campaigns. Simmons is easily my favorite, since all of his forms, from a big cat to a T-Rex to Jeff Goldblum, are all so cool and inventive, as are the battles he presents in these forms. From a fight on a moving train, to a sequence straight out of Jurassic Park, to forcing him to eat lightning. These fights and transformations all need to return, and they don't even need to do much to them, since they are already pretty awesome. But any good changes are welcomed, to give veteran players a refreshing experience. The Ustanak is an awesome monster and he is put to good use overall. The only changes I would suggest for it are A. Include at least one section where he stalks you freely, Mr. X Nemesis style. There is one such section in the game already, but it's a bit gimmicky with these bugs and very scripted. And the second, more boss fights with it that are straight up fights instead of gimmick fights like the one on the helicopter. With the ability to hilariously grab people and put them in a cage on his back, and to change his right hand, there is a lot they can do with him in order to create challenging, tense, inventive, and fun encounters that make it an even more memorable, unstoppable stalker. Deborah is a very fun and dynamic boss fight, especially since 3 characters face her. I would love it if they expand the minecart section, the highlight of the fight. The Berserk and the Invisible Snake are on the same boat, masterfully designed and offering supremely imaginative encounters, but they are not utilized to their utmost potential. The actual fight with the Berserk is way too short, and you kill it with a random explosive barrel that conveniently slides by. Making the fight with it longer and finding a better way to off it would go a long way towards improving it. As for the snake, giving it a bigger playground to stalk you in and having it do so freely in a non-scripted fashion would definitely make it a very terrifying creature to go up against. Just imagine Mr. X, but as a giant snake that you can barely see. We will be on our toes constantly for sure. Chainsaw Guy can honestly stay the same. I love that he stalks Ada and then Jake and Sherry while serving up some nerve-wracking fights, since he will insta-kill you if he catches you, and you always fight him in small arenas. In the end, all three characters work together to kill him once and for all, which is very cool. As I alluded to earlier, the helicopter should be removed. Some of the worst, most boring boss fights ever. And I do not count the Lepotica as bosses, though they should definitely return since they are terrifying.
How the hell do I get over there? I'd swing off that statue if I got it to the right angle.
Finally, I want to rapid fire through several small gripes I have with the game. If I combine herbs, it's because I want to heal myself, so remove the need for me to equip them after turning them into pills. The inventory in this game is too limited, especially since items have a stack limit and the only thing you can do to manage it is to delete things, since there are no storage boxes and you cannot use your partner's inventory. Either expand the inventory space, make things stack up to a higher amount, or add storage boxes and or the ability to use your partner as one. Speaking of storage boxes, have typewriters which can serve the same purpose, return complete with save rooms and their music, but keep autosaving and the checkpoints. For stealth sections, mostly Ada's campaign, give us the tools needed to play stealthily, such as crouching and make it so that enemies are not almost completely oblivious and deaf, which removes tension. Lastly, no more having the camera focus on a point of interest with no option to switch the perspective. This is very disorienting in some sections of the game, even if I appreciate the callback to fixed camera angles. There is no denying that RE6 is a divisive entry in the franchise that will be challenging to remake. I cannot wait to see just how Capcom tackles such a massive undertaking. Please let me know what you think the RE6 remake needs to succeed in the comments below. Also, I made a video just like this one for RE5, so click the link on screen now to go watch it. I will see you over there. Thank you so very much for watching.